Hello, coming at you from the slums of Shaolin, the 36th episode in the 36th chamber of the Select Characters podcast. I'm Sam Yates. I will be your host, and I'm joined here by some friends. I've got Enrique Cancel.
Currently watching my neck.
Very good, very good. And Christopher Anderson.
Hi, that's some hype, Sam.
It is some hype. You know, I really wanted to do, for a long time, I planned to go 36 chambers for our 36th episode, but then I feel like it got too much in the collective consciousness, so I'm dialing it back. But I'm still keeping a touch of it.
That's been an opening that's 36 weeks in the making.
It has been. I've been very, very excited, but it just sort of fell off.
Just biding your time since episode 1.
Yep, it's true. So let's get this episode cranking. Let's move forward and let's talk about what we've been playing. And it has been another excellent week for video games. Let's talk a little bit about what we've been playing. Let's start with Chris. What you been playing this week?
Well, I've been sick for the better part of the week. That headache that we mentioned last week, that just sort of continued through the rest of the week.
That is not a fun game.
Sorry?
That is not a fun game.
No, it isn't. It isn't at all. But, you know, I was out of commission for the better part of the week, so I didn't really play a lot of video games. But on the tail end of the week, I started playing GTA 5 online, just because. Mm-hmm. And they updated that significantly on PC, man. Like, there's yachts now that you can buy as your house. Like, yachts that sort of drift off the coast of Los Santos.
Nice.
Yeah, and they have, like, air missiles and stuff. So if you fly over them, you get shut down by missiles.
Wow, for your yacht? That's a good upgrade.
Yeah. So me and my friend, I had a friend over here, and we just wanted to check out what the boats were all about. So we swam to it, and then we found out that it was basically just a condo on the water. And then we got shot out of the sky when we flew over it in a helicopter. Good times, good times.
I've heard some good stuff about the multiplayer heist. Did you get a chance to jump into that at all?
Oh, yeah, I did play a couple of those like months back. And to be honest, yes, they are fun, but I don't really get why they were delayed so as long as they were.
Is that because of a lack of content, or?
No, it's just not. It wasn't just. I don't think it was worth the year-long delay. It's not that spectacular. It's just fun. It's more objective-based stuff that has like a storyline from start to finish, which is kind of interesting, but it isn't shocking or fantastic by any stretch of the imagination. But, you know, it's GTA Online. If you like GTA enough to play it with other people, you know what to expect. And they implemented some quality of life things into the online portion that makes it a lot more fun now. I don't know. I'm trying to find out why people are so nuts about this, because to me it's just a sort of fun open world with several other people in there. Most of them are fucking psychopaths, but it's not fantastic. I don't know. I'll report back in like a couple of weeks on my findings, because I'm getting into it a bit more now, and I'm gaining levels and stuff, and I just bought my first house in that game, so I'm gonna see where I end up.
That sounds all right.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Renowned Explorers.
Yeah, for the game club.
Yeah. We still, you'll hear our full thoughts on that during the game club. I'll just say one thing: surprisingly fun
and cute. Yeah, charming.
Yeah. It looks like a cartoon. Very, very well done visual style.
All right, cool. Sounds like a good week. Let's slide on over here to Enrique. What you been playing this week?
It's actually been a pretty late week. Definitely a little bit of Renowned Explorers for the game club. Actually put a lot of time into Pocket Mortys that came out. This Adult Swim game is a mobile game. I mean, it's fun for what it is. All it is, it's a free-to-play Pokemon copy. It's just set in the Rick and Morty universe.
How's the writing?
It's actually pretty funny. It's got really fun voiceovers. It's like direct quotes from the staff. The cool thing is, it's got a really simple story where Mortys are being kidnapped around the multiverse and there's like this Morty battle fad going around where everybody's capturing Mortys and using them to battle. So Rick and Morty go out to try and find like what with this. And like they kind of recreate the whole Pokemon atmosphere. Like you have to battle for gym badges, and the reason you do that is that I think the Council of Rick steals your portal gun, and in order to show that you're responsible enough to own a portal gun, you basically need to go around different dimensions and battle Mortys until you get your Morty badge, and then when you have like a certain amount of them, you can actually show that you're responsible enough to get it back.
Okay, then.
That's fine. I mean, it's just like a fan service game, right? I mean, I love the show.
Essentially, that's all it is. It's because it's a copy and paste of Pokemon. I mean, the leveling, the skills, the action point system, the health. I mean, it's take your basic Pokemon Red and then just put a Rick and Morty skin on it. But It's free to play, so I'm not really that mad about it. It's a fun way to kind of waste your time.
Yeah,
What's
exactly.
the monetization like?
That's not too bad. Like, you basically just buy, like, you can buy online tickets for the Slick and Chits?
Blips and shits.
Yeah. So you kind of just use that to buy things. We have like some in-game items and stuff like that, but it's nothing like game breaking. It's pretty removed. So you never feel like you're being... You know how most bowl games like to delay your progress to the point where like you feel like you have to spend money if you want to like progress?
Yeah.
It's pretty far removed from that, so it's not intrusive at all.
That's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's got some like mechanics. You got the traditional... they're very tongue-in-cheek about it because it's literally a rock, paper, scissors kind of elemental game. Where you know how all those Pokemon games, you have like fire beats water, water beats grass, and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's right. In this one, like he's just literally a scissors type.
Yeah, it's at least rock, paper, scissors types.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very tongue-in-cheek, but I mean, it's well done. Like I said, it's free to play, so it's one of those games that you can kind of just be sitting on the couch, pop it open for like 10 minutes, and then put it away.
You got to do something until season 3.
Pretty much. So doing that, and then finally, Dragon's Dogma came out for PC yesterday, so I've been kind of doing some time into that.
Yeah, it sure did, didn't it?
Yeah, forgot how much fun that game was.
That game is really great. That game's really good. I've only played it for maybe 3 hours.
What class did you start off with?
Strider.
Yeah, that's what I did. When I
thought
first
the
played it
knives
on
were
Xbox, I played it as a warrior, so I figured to go the opposite.
So,
Yeah.
question from somebody who has never played it before. What's that game like? Like, what even is it?
Enrique would have to answer that. I have no idea. I've only played it for 3 hours.
I mean, it's like The Witcher 3 in the sense that it's like your fantasy-style RPG. Your main character gets Kali-mad by a dragon, so most of the story revolves around you trying to get strong enough to basically find the dragon and get your heart back.
Oh, right, yeah, that classic story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The age-old tale. Dragon rips
TV
your heart
tropes
out
right no,
and then
it's,
eats it right in front of you.
Where the game really shines is the combat system, because it borrows a lot from a Monster Hunter, I guess would probably be my first go-to. Just because it's like your character and you're finding these like giant monolithic creatures. Like there's chimeras, there's hippogriffs, there's griffins.
And you can climb them like in Shadow of the Colossus, so you can actually scale yourself up on their backs, like stab them in the head.
Yeah, and it's really cool because you can kind of use that grab mechanic to your advantage. I mean, there's one battle where you're fighting a griffin outside the main town, and I just climb on its back and kind of attack its wings while it's trying to fly away, and it came crash landing to the middle of the field, which is really cool. But by the same token, he did pick me up, and I tried slashing his legs, only for him to drop me 50 feet in the air. So that does kill your character.
This kills the adventurer.
The combat feels really good in that game. That's probably my favorite part so far.
I like it because for me, it kind of feels weighty. It feels like you're swinging real weapons, and even the physics of like picking up a barrel and throwing it. It looks realistic.
Yeah, picking up a pot, like that pot looks heavy, and he's always got to like grandma toss it, and then it shatters everywhere. Throwing pots in that game I thought was awesome. Like that's such a small thing, but it's just like he picks it up and it feels so heavy, and he throws it and it doesn't go very far. And then you can also, when you're fighting people, you can like knock them down and pick them up. And I threw a guy sort of over the side of a cliff, and like his head hit the ground and like blood shot out of it. So just the fact that they animated all of that I thought was cool. I mean, he stood right back up and then ran around the side of the cliff to come attack me again because it wasn't enough to finish him. But I liked the fact that he just didn't end up at the bottom standing and run over.
Best item throwing mechanics 2016? Your predictions?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I think it's a really good port overall.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was surprised because usually PC ports, you kind of see that they, get a little bit lazy and they kind of lose a little bit of effort. But no, man. I mean, even running at 60 frames a second, it was gorgeous.
Yeah, it runs real smooth. Some of the pop-in is a little bit bad, but I imagine that's just something they weren't able to handle.
Yeah, I mean, that still happened when it first released on 360 and PS3. So, I mean, you still got a little bit of pop-in animation, texturing, and all that. But overall, for what it is, it's a great port, I think.
Yeah, I like the warrior class, too, because I got a pawn that was a warrior, and not only was he taunting the enemy, but he also grabbed one of those dudes by their shoulders and like held them back so I could stab him in the stomach 7 times.
Yeah, I do love the grab mechanic actually is used for a lot of things. Like you can actually make combo attacks where you can actually, like Sam was saying, grab an enemy and hold them still for somebody else to do. One thing that I did is when you get to the main town, there's kind of like a dungeon that it's just this giant spiral staircase. And you're not supposed to go there right away because it's filled with like undead that are really high level. But I made it about halfway down because I was cheesing the grab mechanic because all I would do would be grab the zombies and just throw them off the edge. And I just kept doing that over and over again. So I made it about halfway down to this dungeon. And I'm like, oh, this is fucking easy. And there's this giant ogre just sitting right towards like the middle of the section. I'm like, I can jump on his hand and do this again. So I jump on him, grab his hand, and he just like stops and stares at me and then smashes his hand on the ground, killing me in one hit.
Yeah, can't throw him down.
So it's kind of cool that the AI on the enemies has kind of awareness to it. So if you like jump on its back, another thing he did was actually he slammed his back onto the wall when I was on it. So there's kind of like this awareness to him. So it's not just being able to grab him and exploit a weak.
Yeah, I'd put most of the kudos on that game in the area of the combat. Everything else is generally just sort of what you need for an RPG. It's fine. It's not amazing or anything, but the combat I think is the thing that really shines. Or at least for me, in the very small window of time that I've been playing that game.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a bit of a flawed gem. I think one of the big points of contention is the travel system. It's very much like an old school RPG where they don't really prioritize fast traveling. They really want you to actually go out and explore the world. And it's cool on the one hand because you get to travel by foot from point A to point B, and you get to see a lot of the world and experience it. But at the same time, it can become kind of monotonous when you have to have like a fetch quest. It's like, hey, go here, and I go here, and I go back there. And you realize that you can't really fast travel between the points, so you have to keep traveling, on foot back and forth. And sometimes when you're traveling at night, the difficulty scales insanely with like new creatures. They're a lot stronger and stuff like that. So it's really easy for you to get outclassed. And for a lot of people, that kind of becomes a turnoff. But at the same time, for me,
I can see why.
Yeah, but it's also like they wanted it to be because they wanted it to feel like a grand adventure where your character, you have to be careful when you want to travel. You have to make sure that you can get there before nightfall, if at all. So I don't know. I think it fits the genre.
Yeah, I agree, but modern conveniences, are very convenient nowadays anyway. And walking around in an open world is fun for like the first 5 or 6 times you see that one building somewhere and that one castle somewhere. But after 50 times of that, without the option of traveling at the press of a button, it can get really boring really quickly.
I'm willing to call all of that stuff a design choice and not worry about it. But what drives me nuts is the fact that you can't run. Constantly because you run out of stamina, and then your guy stops and puts his hands on his knees and sits there for like 7 seconds.
You gotta catch your breath, man.
Oh my god, it's the worst. So if you want to run, you have to run and then walk for a minute, and then run and then walk for a minute, and never run so much that he ends up having to put his hands on his. I don't like if you want to pull the fast travel system out of your game, that's fine. I totally get that. That's cool. That's a nice decision that you made, but just like having to watch that stamina meter when I'm trying to go from place to place is driving me crazy.
See, and it's funny because like I like the inclusion of that stamina meter because in combat, I think it's a really good tactical tool because
I agree. Yeah.
The fact that your character has to stop and catch his breath, it means a world of difference when you're in the middle of a combat and you're wasting your stamina hacking and slashing, and all of a sudden you realize, crap, I'm pretty much vulnerable for 7 seconds because I'm out of breath.
Exactly.
You could use that system when you're in combat and just
give
people the option of fast traveling outside of combat.
Yeah, if they would implement like an unlimited stamina outside of combat, I think it would go to smooth things over a lot more.
I mean, yes, I get it. If they let you run constantly, then you're not thinking about the day-night cycle, and it takes away some of the tension from the travel thing. But there's a way to do that, but be less frustrating at the same time.
Right.
Where I'm not trying to watch a meter while I'm just trying to go from place to place. And, there's a way to do that. I don't think that's the best, but I'm willing to forgive them that. It's not so much that it puts me off the entire game. It's just a milding.
Don't you have a horse or something to that extent?
Nope.
Oh.
Travel on foot.
That'd be great. I'd take a horse. If they wanted to give me one, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Or even do like
on everything.
Or just do like the Skyrim thing where you can take a wagon to fast travel to different places in the world.
Yeah. They did include like now with the Dark Arisen version, you can actually unlock more fairy stones and waypoints. So later on, you can kind of just drop them after your first travel point. You drop a waystone, and then next time you can just use the fairy stone to travel there instantly. So it becomes a lot easier to kind of set up like small nexuses or nexi.
Sure, whichever.
Yeah, but you can kind of set up like little central hubs by you just pick a location that's relatively close to outlying areas, and then use that as your kind of fast travel system. So it's I think they try to meet you halfway because a lot of people did complain when it first released about the fast travel system.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like I get that it's a design choice, but it doesn't feel like a great design choice. Especially if people have been complaining about it, or if that's one of the popular complaints that's levied against this game.
Sometimes people are wrong.
no doubt about it. But
there's somebody who's bitching about the fast travel system, who then 10 minutes later will tell you a story about how they were trying to go somewhere and night was falling, and they had to get to the castle in time before the wolves came out.
Yeah, but isn't that better if you have the choice of having that adventure?
I don't know,
but if I had the choice, I would just never
forego the choice altogether, and it kind of I don't know. It's a weird line between convenience and immersion.
Fair enough.
But I haven't played it enough to be able to say that that's that's smart and that they did the right thing. So don't listen to me. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
All right, we'll talk to you next week then.
Yeah, but the combat and then also the pawn system is really cool. As your character, you make your own pawn and they're sort of your constant companion. And then in addition to that, if you want a 4-player party, you go to the pawn shop and buy 2 other people who are, I guess, other players' pawns.
Yep.
And that's pretty neat, I think. So you can flesh out your party however you want. And I want to say it's free if the pawn is your level, but costs money if the pawn is higher than you.
Yeah, because one thing that I like about that system is that the pawns you hire don't level up. So sure, you can go ahead and buy like a level 30 pawn and it'll be pretty expensive. But I mean, they'll help you out. But once you go past level 30, that kind of pawn becomes less and less useful for you. So you basically return it to the pawn shop and then grab another.
That's interesting.
It is.
I don't think I've ever heard something like that.
It's kind of cool.
And they sort of learn too, apparently. Like if I take my main pawn on a quest, now my main pawn knows how to do that quest. So if somebody rents them, then my pawn will show them the way through it.
Yeah, and it works for enemies too. So if you fought enough of like a certain type of enemy, your pawn kind of gets like some intimate knowledge on like what the weaknesses are and how to best fight them.
It's fire. The weakness is always fire.
But when you rent a pawn that's been through those enemies, or that someone rents your pawn, they'll give you hints on like, oh, use fire, my lord, or whatever it takes to kind of ease your battle a little bit.
Right.
It's cool.
Yeah, the pawn system's really cool. So I mean, it's a lot of fun.
Right. Well, I got to be honest here. You haven't really persuaded me to give it a go, but I am interested enough to maybe think about buying it when it goes on sale.
Yeah, see, my thing is, I'm very hesitant to push a game that I know is very contentious with people because I like it. I'm a huge fan of it, but I can definitely see its flaws. So it's not a game I would recommend everybody get just for the sake of getting it.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to wait for a discount.
Let me tell you this. The pawns know when there's items inside a container, so as you're running around, they'll break stuff and get the items out of it and pick the items up for you so you don't have to worry about it.
Oh, God, I wish more games did that.
And so, check this out. I go to this forest, and this lady wants me to talk to this witch. I get to the hut to talk to the witch, and it's just this girl. And she's like, hey, the witch was my grandma. She died. Sorry. Like, okay, that's a bummer. And immediately after the cutscene dropped out, my pawns just started wrecking shop on her entire house.
Amazing.
So that was awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah.
a selling point right there. That was the funniest thing I've ever seen. They just started breaking all of her stuff. Sorry you're all alone in this world, girl, but I'm taking all of it.
Yeah, I think they take a lesson out of Link's Handbook of Finance, and they just pretty much break anything for the chance that there might be items in it.
Mm-hmm. But I like not having to do that. I like, looking over in the side and seeing that my pawn picked stuff up as I was going from place to place. That feels pretty...
Yeah.
I just realized how much that looks like a racketeering ring, with you just standing there completely nonchalant while your pawns wreck house in this poor girl's house.
Yeah, she didn't pay her elbow insurance, man.
Is there any adult here? No? Boys, you know what to do.
Yep. So overall, good game, I think. At least, but like I said, I've only played it a very small chunk of time, but I am eager to get more into it, see more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much going to use it to buy my time until XCOM 2 comes out February 5th, so that's a huge one that I'm looking.
Oh yeah, definitely, man.
Me
That's
too.
looking rather good, actually. I've been watching gameplay from some YouTube channels, and it looks really good.
I'm trying to avoid watching a lot of the gameplay because that's one of the titles that I actively enjoy, doing the research and kind of being surprised by what comes at me. So I don't want to spoil too much.
Yeah. I don't know a lot about the game, but I know of some improvements over the original XCOM. Well, not original, but the reboot XCOM Enemy Within, or Enemy Unknown.
Yeah, Unknown Within was the expansion.
Right. Yeah, they did a couple of improvements on the mechanics that I didn't really like in the first one, so I'm definitely interested in playing that, yeah.
Anything else this week?
No, that's pretty much been it. It's been a really light week for games. So.
Yeah, kind of for me too, but it wasn't light. I just played a lot of 2 games. I played Dragon's Dogma, and I also played a good heap of Endless Legend after we were talking about it last
did you get more into it?
Oh, yeah.
I did get kind of into it. I like that game a lot. But I also, it sort of feels like an engine. It feels like driving a car with a bad transmission. Like, it feels like driving a car that slips on first gear. Because what happens is I'm playing the game and I'm like bored and I don't want to play anymore. And then all of a sudden an hour's gone by.
One more turn.
So it's like, It's like if that game took place on the highway, it wouldn't be a problem because you would slip a little bit on first gear and then you would hit it, you'd get up to 5th and you would just cruise. But it feels like that game is a car with a bad transmission in the middle of a city. So like it keeps stopping and then starting and then stopping and then starting. And every time you want to start going again, you have to sort of work your way through that slipping first gear. But when it clicks and when it flows, time just disappears. But when it's not doing that, I just don't want to play it anymore. And it's a weird mix of things. So I don't know. I feel like I have to play it more because like that evaluation doesn't seem like it's extremely helpful.
How does it feel? Because I remember you were really hesitant to start playing it because you didn't like how you can set up your own parameters for the world.
Yeah, I still don't like that, but it's not the worst thing in the world.
Okay.
I still would like to have like a campaign or even just scenarios would be great. But it's actually, it's nowhere near as bad. It's not worth freezing with indecision over like I was. Definitely true.
The scenario thing is weird because I find like, you know how like each race or each faction has its own like quest chain, but the questions are broken up into almost like mini scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the whole stop and go thing kind of stems from you were talking about because some of the scenarios seem more involved than the others. Yeah.
Well, it's like when it does engage me and I'm trying to think, okay, I need to do this, so I need this technology. That's going to take 13 turns. Making this guy is going to take 12, so hopefully those two things will line up and it'll come out at the same time, versus how long is it going to take this guy over here to bring his troops to me while I'm trying to do all this. When I'm actively thinking and trying to figure out those puzzles, the game is pretty phenomenal. And I almost think that as I learn more about it, those puzzles have been there all along, but as I learn more about the game, I'm able to see them.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, okay, they just got their like industrial megapole, so that means that their society is probably set up this way, which means I need to this. And stuff like that doesn't immediately reveal itself to you. Yeah. You need to sort of play it for a while to learn what those things mean. Like, okay, this guy just took the 8 minor faction camps that he needs to get that one achievement. So his military is probably not quite near his hometown. I might be able to sneak in there, like if I can find them on the map. Like I think that the more I learn about that game, the more I'll be able to fix the transmission. If that makes sense.
That's one of the reasons that I like the faction specific quest lines they do, like with the necrophages. The fact that they completely cripple any kind of diplomacy for that faction. You have to go to war with things eventually, to the point where you eventually have an actual faction quest where it wants you to go out and actively take over 3 territories.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. It kind of forces your hand to play out of your comfort zone a little bit, which I kind of really appreciate.
Yeah, I guess I don't even know what my comfort zone is, but I feel like it just takes so long to play that game.
Yeah, well, that's 4X games. Those games weren't really designed to play in like 1 hour session.
It just feels, it's okay for a game to take a long time, but those also feel like they take a long time. Anyway, it's very slow, and you can't turn the animations up once you're already in a game.
Yeah,
which fix that, please, immediately. Because I started like 3 games trying to remember to turn the animation speed up before I finally got it right. Because I would go in there and be like, oh, I forgot again, let's do it. And I'd start reading something about some faction or something about the world size and start new game. And then like first time I get into combat, oh, I forgot to do that again. Like that's not the game's fault. But I mean, they should give me an option in the menu.
Can't you just ram space to speed up the animation?
I don't know. I'll have to try that. Because the world exploration, that would be a good time if it works there, because watching those people sort of slowly trot along.
I really need that, or else I forget where my units are. I've got a very short-term memory.
Yeah, and you do tend to have a lot of people out there in the field doing a lot of different stuff. I mean, I really do think that the times that now that I'm bored and frustrated, I want to stop, there's something there that I could be engaging with that I just don't know about yet.
Right.
So the more I play it, I think the more it'll open up to me, and the more I'll spend more time on the highway and less time in this. So I'm excited to play more of that game.
Yeah, I find that whole exploration bit in 4X games always the most interesting thing. Like, I wonder what I'm going to encounter if I go here, which civilizations I'm playing against, and this and that. What I like about Endless Legend is that you have to take these seasons into account as well, because everything becomes harder in the winter.
Yeah, the winter's cool. I do like that as a mechanic.
The cool thing is you can actually use that to your advantage if you manage to catch somebody off guard.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. Yeah. But I do like it, and I do like the fact that it's sort of, you never know exactly when it's going to come, and you never know exactly how long it's going to last, but you also have a general idea. That kind of stuff is really incredible from a design perspective.
I think one thing that really stuck out for me more than like the Sid Meier's games, because you can see the similarities really plainly, but the diplomacy system is a lot more robust.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. And you just go into that screen and you can see where you're at with... Actually, let's just do that, because the UI and the interfacing in that game is pretty freaking cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is where you need it at your fingertips in a way that makes sense. And when you're trying to display that much information, that's really important. Except for the fact that when you're selecting groups of worker pawns, you select from right to left. I think you should select them from left to right.
That would be, a little more
It seems
logical.
like a really weird, like small little tidbit that you wouldn't think makes a difference, but apparently it's enough to warrant mentioning.
So many times I want to move one guy, and I'm moving 5 guys because I click on the leftmost dude, try to pull him over. And I wonder if that's just because they can't. Maybe they don't fall backwards unless you take them from the end. Maybe there's some limitation there where if you remove the first one, the other ones can't slot in that way. They can only remove from the back. Maybe that's just some little programming. Anyway, good game overall.
Yeah.
Good game. You're right. I was thinking too much about the beginning shit, and once I got past that, it's totally fine. It's not a big...
Yeah, it's a very compelling game, and the entire genre is actually pretty compelling. So I'm glad that you've taken to Endless Legends specifically, because that is a game that it's a gem. Like the way it looks, the way it presents itself, it's pretty great. It's not the best 4X I've ever played, because that's Civ 5 in my opinion, but it is definitely an experience unlike any other.
That's fair. That's good. And that's my whole week, man. So you guys want to move and talk about some topics?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my question was, are games bad or are we bad? And what I mean about that is when we're evaluating a video game, trying to decide, is this a good experience? Is this a bad experience? Normally, we keep our analysis localized within the realm of that video game. What are we doing? What are the actions? What's the story? How are the graphics? How's the sound? All that stuff. We think about it in terms of that game. But what's sort of interesting to me is that evaluation is so much more than it is just a function of that game's parts. It's also about us. It's about our lives and our schedule, how much time we have to play it, and we are a very enormous part of that evaluation. And so it's possible sometimes that when we think a game is bad, it's not even that game's fault. It's just like we don't have time to play it in the way that it shines best, or the way that it's to be interacted with that makes it shine. We don't want to interact with it that way.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to look at us, the people who are trying to decide whether a video game is good or bad. It's often something that I struggle with when I'm playing a video game and I'm thinking, I don't like this. This game sucks. And then I realize, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe I don't have the time to put into this thing that it's asking of me. Maybe I'm not interacting with it in the way that it is best interacted with. And so I want to talk about that piece of the puzzle a little bit.
A good example for you would probably be The Witcher 3, because that one needs an enormous amount of time investment for it to really shine.
Sure.
And if your time is limited, you'll have to play it in very short bursts, and then none of that will really have any effect on you. Like it won't make an impact on you personally if you just play it in very short bursts.
The Witcher absolutely does need a longer playtime. It needs, when you sit down with it, you should be playing it for longer spans of time to allow it to sort of breathe and open up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's very difficult to come to that game and play it for 30 minutes and walk away satisfied.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally that's sort of where I see it the most, would be in those very large scale RPGs. Xenoblade I kind of had the same problem with. It was just, it doesn't fit into my schedule or my life schedule when I want to play video games, how long I want to play them for. And so I sort of think, I'm not having a good time, but that's not the game's fault, like at all.
How did you solve that quote unquote problem with Metal Gear Solid 5, because that is a very long game as well.
It is, and I think that it's that game was a format setup sort of thing. They, which is funny because I just listened to a podcast where this is what they talked about, and those were the exact 2 games that they used as examples. And what they said, and what I think was a good point, was that Metal Gear is set more up like a Chinese menu. It's just, you jump in, you play a mission, and it feels like a self-contained, it's just a whole list of self-contained little nuggets of experience. So you can get on there, play mission 23, and if you want to stop, you just stop. There's no prerequisites required to play that mission, like, say, in The Witcher, where you need to go gather potions to make oil for your blade to fight a thing.
Right, yeah.
You're just in, and you go, and you're done. And
yeah,
even though they may take the same time investment on the surface, it's that organizational structure that is the difference between those two.
Plus, one can imagine that Metal Gear Solid 5 having an intro and an outro, including credits after each mission, just helps that sense of finality.
I guess you could say that, yeah. But, I mean, it
Yeah.
feels like you get in, you do something, and then you jump back out. And maybe, The Witcher just isn't as clear about that because it would completely break the immersion of that game to have it set up and basically be a menu.
That's a really good point because, like you said, with Metal Gear Solid, everything is like these little self-contained missions. You're in Mother Base and you can choose to go on a mission, and there's a very clear beginning and an end to that mission itself. And it's all, like you said, self-contained in a small little experience. Whereas The Witcher, I mean, there was countless times where I wouldn't play for a few days, and I'd go back, turn it on, and I'm in the middle of a town. I'm like, crap, what the fuck was I doing?
Yeah.
And it kind of, I don't know, it breaks the immersion to having to break up that experience and go back every single time and trying to find your bearings again versus a game like Metal Gear where, like you said, it's because of the very nature of how it's organized, it's a lot easier to just pick it up in small little segments.
Is that an age thing, you think? It's just because you're getting a bit older now. You don't want or can devote enormous amounts of time on a game per session, you know what I mean?
I don't know. I mean, it is in the sense that theoretically, as you get older, just you have more shit to do. I mean, it's not from the perspective of it just naturally happens as you get older. It's more just the accumulation of life sort of comes in.
Yeah, but then it makes sense that you sort of veer towards games that are a bit more compartmentalized.
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I mean, I'm very familiar with that mission list and that structure, and checking things off of a list feels good, especially when each one can just be completed and then done. I like that. That feels organized to me in a way that a sprawling game like Skyrim or The Witcher 3 doesn't.
I think it also has something to do with how satisfied each session can make you feel. A good example would be Rocket League, because that every match has a start, has a middle, and has an end, and every end feels satisfactory. So if you can basically stop after each match because you had your fun, your experience with it. If you get what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and Rocket League's an excellent example because it works the opposite way of those other games. If I was somebody who was in a situation where I wanted to sit down and really play something and sink into it for hours at a time, Rocket League might turn me off.
Right.
I mean, obviously, you probably wouldn't go to them because they are very different games and you wouldn't go in there looking for that. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it was a whole pile of bite-sized matches, you might want to play Endless Legend multiplayer online where it takes 6 hours.
Oh god, I tried that, man.
Yeah.
When the choice to stop playing at any given moment is removed, I instantly stop being interested, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Which is why I can't really do Civilization 5 multiplayer. I just can't do it. I can play it on my own for 6 hours at a time in a weekend, But if I do it with friends, I'm done in 40 minutes or something like that, which is stupid. That has everything to do with me and nothing with the game.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And I don't know how we acknowledge that or start to think about that. But like I said, I have trouble playing a game and telling you whether it's a good game or a bad game. I can tell you whether I like it or I don't like it, but that doesn't necessarily translate directly into that video game being good or bad, except in the clearest cases where it's obvious that game is terrible.
Yeah. Enrique might know this, but Destiny is a great example as well of a game that is very compartmentalized due to all the different missions, and you can select the missions in a different screen and stuff. And I did find myself quitting the game after one mission or two missions because it had an ending and I was satisfied.
Yeah, no, but no, it's true because that's one of those games that's split up in that way, and it's weird because it kind of tries to do both of those things, because you have those raid instances where the raids do take a couple hours to complete with a group of people. And those are meant for more prolonged play sessions versus those individual missions where you can sit down, let's say you have an hour to kill, jump down and then do that and knock it out.
Yeah, that's a good idea to have the short time and the long time content.
It's more choice, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Which is a good way to sort of bridge that gap. But often the single player games are generally one note in what they're asking of you. It's either a short time game or a long time game, or it's broken up into chunks and you can make it however short or long of a game as you want it to be.
Yeah, but that's what most games do, don't they? Like the chapters thing. You have them in every single shooter and in a lot of RPGs as well. Just chapters, which are usually an endpoint for, a chapter, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And what I think is interesting is not even... I think time is a very large factor in saying that discussion of is it me or is it the game? I think time is absolutely one of the largest circumstances, but also play style. Yeah. And I think that's why you see a lot of games offer you so many options about how you want to approach it, different weapons that cater to your own personal play style, because it's possible if you were a guy who liked to cast spells and the game only had a sword, you'd be like, this game sucks.
Yeah.
And it's almost the same case. It's just like, instead of time, we're talking about preference.
It's funny with the time thing, because it almost sounds like you're making the argument that if you were to put the same person in a room with a game for 1 hour and come back for the same room with the same game for, I don't know, like 6 hours, that they would have a higher rating for the 6 hour span versus when they were only playing for 1 hour?
They would, but I'm saying that they would, but it depends on the game. Some games are designed you need to ramp in and then ramp out. So the 6 hour playtime is more accommodating to that. Mm-hmm. For example, in The Witcher, where if you want to fight something, you need to gather the plants to build your bombs that are perfect against this thing that you want to fight, instead of just jumping in and fighting the thing. I mean, haven't you ever played a game that feels like if you played it for a longer session, you had a better time with it?
No, yeah, because you keep the games I keep thinking about is like the Soul series with like Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, and even to a lesser degree Bloodborne. That's a game that I've actually enjoyed progressively less as the time has gone by, mm-hmm. and I think it's kind of it's almost related to that time versus playstyle argument you were making, because with Demon Souls and Dark Souls, when they first came out, I mean, I remember I was still in school, so I had hours to burn. I finished a school assignment, or I'm done with whatever I need for the week or papers, and I mean, I could devote almost like 24 hours in an entire weekend to just playing the game, and that's the kind of game that your skill gets better the more you play. But progressively, as like Dark Souls 2 came out and Bloodborne, they were still enjoyable experiences for me, but I found that I didn't have the patience or time to sit there and like bash your head against the wall over and over again, learning the enemy movements, learning their placements and things like that.
Sure. And I guess overall, my very general umbrella argument is that, yes, we know that video games are subjective, obviously, but a certain amount of that subjectiveness comes from us, and maybe we're not looking at that. Maybe we're not putting those factors in as much as we should be.
Right.
When you say the subjective, are you referring more to like the external mitigating factors, like time available and things like that, or also our own biases that we bring with ourselves? I think
it's both, but I think that we're all sort of very aware of our own biases, or theoretically we should be. I think that that's something that is known and understood. When we say video games are subjective, that's normally what we're talking about. But I would say that, yes, that's obviously true, but also there's the subjective quality of all those external factors. And so in evaluating the quality of a game, that comes into play, and that maybe we don't think about it as much as we should be. And how much of that, and basically, since we just talk about shit, I'm talking about how much of that goes to the game, how much of that is beholden to the game, and how much of that is beholden to us ourselves when we approach it.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was reading some of the early reviews for Dragon's Dogma, and I forget the site, but they gave Dragon's Dogma kind of like a mid to lower review. And one of the major cons they cited for the game was like the lack of a fast travel system, and it criticized that really heavily in the game, saying how much of it was an inconvenience, how other games nowadays include it, so there's no reason for not to do it. It was a poor design choice, yada yada yada. And it kind of circles back to what you're saying, because I mean, I personally don't think it's a bad choice, at least not to the point where you should lower the review of the game. I can understand how it's a convenience with the time involved, but I don't think it's something they should necessarily penalize the game for.
That's the subjective part there, isn't it? So you don't like this, and you dislike it so much that it drags down the overall your overall perception of the entire product.
Right, and how do I know how much of that is, okay, this is a reviewer who's just trying to grind through this game, and they need to play it to write that review, and if it had a fast travel system, they could do their job faster.
Well, if you work at one of the biggest sites or the bigger magazines, you usually get the games like a week, maybe 2 weeks, sometimes longer than that in advance, so you can take your time with it, essentially. And I can understand in the case of Dragon's Dogma why you wouldn't like the absence of a fast travel system, and why that would drag down the score a bit, because I would probably do the same in his shoes, because it seems like an enormous oversight to me. Like, not include something that is essentially in all games. Like, there's a reason why it's in all games,
See, but on that point, I would hold a counterpoint where I would acknowledge that, yeah, it's a little bit of inconvenience, and it might not be something that people would enjoy, but I wouldn't dock any points, of a final review because of it. Because for me, that's, that is a very subjective thing to argue about.
Yeah, but reviews are subjective. Let's not start that conversation, by the way, because I can hear like Sam going.
No, but that's what Sam was saying. Like, for me, I guess I'm more aware that like that design choice for it, like excluding a fast travel system, it's what the game does, and whether or not it contribute, like the game does it well, it's not really for me to decide. I can say whether or not I enjoyed it, but I don't think that as an overall, at least for me, I wouldn't really dock it points in an overall score because I don't think it's fair for me to criticize it.
No, I don't think that's true. I mean, if you're a reviewer, you're supposed to look at all the systems and all the mechanics in a game and see if they work well together. And this person obviously didn't think that the absence of fast travel worked well with the rest of the game.
I guess, but I mean, I feel like that's like criticizing Borderlands for having like the cell shading because Call of Duty looked realistic, and you're saying, well, Call of Duty doesn't. Why can't this game?
That's aesthetic. That is different.
I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of it being a design choice and that they wanted you to do these things, it's also muddy. It's also muddy and muddled together, like the objective and the subjective and how we rate and review video games all together. It's like teasing out the individual parts of it is just incredibly complicated. And I guess what I'm trying to do is just add more factors to that giant soup.
Yeah, but if you think that something doesn't work, it doesn't work for you. And that's fine. If you want to dock points for that, that's absolutely fine because that's your opinion. Somebody else might. Well, we already have it here. Like, I think it's fine to dock points for something like that if it doesn't work. And Enrique, he thinks it's not up to him to do that, Well,
I mean, okay, what about a game's difficulty? Would you dock points for a game being too hard?
That's a tough guy. I personally would not.
Because, I think that's actually probably one of the better indications of, is the game bad or am I bad? And is it fair for me to criticize a game because I'm not good at it? Because of the difficulty level?
Yes, I think you can. Is the game hard, but is it fair? In that case, I don't think you should dock points for that. But if it's just hard because some of the systems aren't as responsive as they should be, if the game is essentially hampering your ability to play the game correctly, quote unquote, then you should dock points because that's obviously a design choice that didn't work out in the game's favor. But if it's a hard game and it's also fair, like if every time you die, it's because you fucked up, that's fine. And then the game's working as intended. If you die because the game's not working well, or the game's mechanics and systems don't gel well together, that's not good design, is it?
That's true. But there's also the situation where you just don't like it because it's so hard. And I guess what you have to see is, you have to sort of see forward and think about, okay, what would this experience be like if I was good at it? And then even though I'm not having that experience, I need to evaluate it.
But that's looking at it objectively, isn't it?
But it's a weird way to do it. I know. It's all both, and it's just strange.
Well, if you're not a reviewer, you don't have to do both. Then the subjective is all you need, essentially. Like, are you going to play a game that you don't really enjoy in your free time? No. You wouldn't.
Yeah. And what I find often is that the games I don't like, it's more of a problem with me than it is with the game. Because I always try to, if I play a game and I don't like it, I try to think about, well, why? What's going on here? Why don't I like it? What's wrong with this? And I think about it maybe too much, but theoretically, every game is somebody's favorite game.
Yeah, exactly. So if somebody else is of the opinion that it's the best game ever and you're not, then obviously the fault lies with you. Well, it's not really a fault.
But that's the way I think about it. And maybe that's the wrong way to think about it, but that's the way I think about everything.
No, of course not. You like what you like.
And so in figuring that out, I like to think that I have a more informed way to say this is what's bad about this game.
Do you think that's because you're aware of those kind of external influences that might?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly a part of it. I mean, it was most recently within Endless Legend. I was like, sometimes I sort of don't like this game. Why? And what I sort of realized is that it's more about me than it is about that game. That game is fantastic for what it is, and everything that I think I don't like about it actually traces back to my preferences and how I want to interact with something and my amount of time that I have to invest in it. And in that case, that game's not bad at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I have the same issue with fighting games. I used to love them, but I just don't have the focus to, invest in a fighting game to actually become good. So for me, fighting games are a really frustrating experience, and especially when you're going to get online playing against other people because it's something you're constantly losing at. And I mean, I'm bad at fighting games, but I'm aware of enough of that to acknowledge that I can't really say that it's bad just because I'm not enjoying it.
Right. And I feel like we just have to cleanly evaluate those things. And I think that the external factors that aren't related to bias and what you personally enjoy, don't enjoy, just the noise that's out there that actually contributes to that evaluation, we just need to take a closer look at that in general.
So I've been playing Shadow of Mordor a lot recently, and that game has a mechanic that when you die, Sauron's army gets stronger, and the orc that killed you rises up in the ranks. So essentially, you're getting punished for being killed, but not in the same way that you usually do, because you are immortal. You just get back to life in a few seconds. You can go do the same thing you were doing before. Only the world and the monsters within it have grown stronger. And I want to talk about failure as a mechanic. Do we know more games that have that mechanic in there? And is it implemented well? What could be done to implement it better in more games? Let's open the floor. Let's see what you guys have.
I think we've really taken a turn on using failure as a mechanic. I think we started out right, and then we fell off, and then now we're starting to get right again.
How so?
And I mean that in the way that it used to be you had a certain number of lives. Mm-hmm. If you lose all the lives, you lose the game. That's cool. That's failure as a mechanic. And what happened, and then we sort of transitioned to the point where there was no more failure as a mechanic. To lose just meant that you reloaded your last save.
Right.
And that was sort of there for a while. All it did was kick you back to the next checkpoint. And in that case, it's not really a mechanic, is it? It sort of is, but really it's just a progress checker. It's not interesting in any way.
Well, it has a cause and effect in Shadow of Mordor. It actually serves a narrative purpose as well.
And so I think that we're sort of, in particular with Shadow of Mordor, that makes sense. When you lose, it should mean something in the larger scale. It shouldn't just be that you reload the last save. I feel like that's of extremely boring use of failure as a mechanic.
Yeah.
I like the way it is in Shadow of Mordor where people get stronger. I like the way it is where you only have 3 lives, and if you lose them all, then that's it. That sort of stuff I think feels better. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if people might be sort of adverse to using failure as a mechanic. Maybe the idea is just to gloss over it, get it over with, and focus on the other things in the game.
Yeah. Like death is a hurdle in games that you unfortunately have to deal with. So why put more attention on that than it absolutely needs?
I think we have it split up almost in 2 camps now, where you have games that actively use death as a mechanic, like Shadows of Mordor or Dark Souls, where dying means losing all your experience that you currently hold. And
it's a great example.
Yeah, and then you get your life reduced in half. So the mechanic at that point, it kind of becomes more challenging for you to get back to where you died to recover all that experience. And then you have games that kind of use it more passively. You see a lot in roguelikes where it's meant to be as a tool for education. You get as far as you can, you kind of see what's up there, you die, and then you come back later armed with the knowledge of what you've already experienced. Yeah, but I think now we're seeing more. Sam was saying like games got to a weird point where they just eliminated the penalty of death period, where dying all that meant was just reloading at a checkpoint. Yeah. But I think we're getting we still have that. I mean, The Witcher 3 does it. You die, reload back to your last save or checkpoint, but it's also done in a bit of a way where death does serve as a bit of education, because a lot of the games that we have, the things that kill you have a little bit more nuances to them. It's not just a bunch of numbers crunching, attacking you. Usually they have weaknesses or they have good vantage points. So I think it kind of does lend to more of a trial and error aspect of it.
Yeah, it basically, you just start Zerg rushing whatever that content is. It's like it increases the amount of iterations that you go through it. You just keep doing it over and over again because it doesn't matter if you die. And I don't like that as much, but I sort of understand why it has become that way.
Mm-hmm. Super Meat Boy also uses death as a mechanic, and it does it rather well, because it's that trial and error thing, but taken to its logical conclusion, basically. And it comes into play, especially at the end of the stage, when you finish the stage, so you can see all your attempts before that, and sort of let you glean what you've done wrong and what you've done right and what you have to look out for on the next level and stuff, which I thought was actually a pretty clever design decision. But because most platformers, they don't show you what you did over the level once you finished it, but Super Meat Boy did.
And generally speaking, in most games, it's a common factor. In most games you play, you're going to fail, because that's just part of the process.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing a very story-driven game or something like that, but you're going to fail. And considering that is such a commonality, that's such a unifying concept, like, I feel like you have to do something with it. You have to make it make sense. And I think it's common to have it that when you die, you sort of carry something over. Mm-hmm. Or you have a few skill points that you brought over. Rogue Legacy kind of is like that. You know, every time you die, you get a little bit better. You can advance a little further.
Right.
I think that you have to use failure as a mechanic if you're doing it right. You have to tie something to that. The enemies have to get stronger, or you only have so many lives and it adds to the tension. Yeah. Or you carry something over, you get a little bit stronger, you make it a little bit farther. I like that kind of stuff. I think that makes sense. And because it's, like I said, every video game, you're going to fail. Eventually.
Roguelikes especially, so right?
Yeah, well, especially those. But in that case, I don't think the failure is really a mechanic because it's not tied into the game. It is a mechanic in the way that you learn a little bit and now you know how to approach different challenges and do things a little differently, but it's not...
It's not something that's actively used.
Yeah, in some roguelikes it is.
Rogue Galaxy is. Rogue Galaxy uses it really well because every time you die, you play as the next in line, essentially, the next of kin. And then all your stats get reshuffled and stuff. So there's definitely an effect that death has on that game, like a very tangible effect.
And I think that's cool. I think that's the way you should do it. If it fits in your game, theoretically, you need to have death be a mechanic. You need it to do something. You need it to change something or make it different in a way. Like Dragon's Dogma has no death penalty. I just reload the last checkpoint. No big deal. Whatever. Moving on.
Yeah.
I know Destiny, one of the boss fights for the Taken King raid, God, what's his name? It's like the big ogre. Yeah, like it actually uses death as a mechanic. So like when you're with your 6-person fire team fighting the boss, whenever a person dies, it fills up a little meter like in the back of the room. It's kind of like a shrine. And every time a person dies, it kind of fuels it more and more. And then when you reach like the last death allowable, it'll do an automatic wipe.
So it's basically an enraged timer, but it's tied to the player's health pool.
Yeah, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you have to take I don't think that games should get a pass for saying, okay, you die, but you learned something. I feel like that's almost a given. Considering the iterative nature of video games, I feel like that's the baseline. Like, of course that's going to happen. I think if that's your failure mechanic, then you have no failure mechanic.
Yeah.
Right.
And not necessarily to say that that's a bad thing, because it really does all depend on implementation, but it's cool when failure does something. I think.
It's kind of cool because it makes you question the meaning, well, not the meaning of death, not to sound all essential, but like the meaning of like why you even have death as a mechanic in the game itself when there's no penalty for it. You know, like you said, Dragon's Dogma. You die, what does that mean? Yeah, just start back at your latest save point. There's really nothing you get out of it. At the worst case, you get like a mild inconvenience if you forgot to save a while ago. But other than that, like it doesn't contribute anything. Well,
you know, you do get the a little bit more knowledge about that encounter. So like. But I'm saying that is basically nothing because no matter what, if it has a fail state, you're going to get that.
Yeah.
So I think we should take that default state and just consider it the same as a zero state.
I mean, in some games though, like they kind of use it as almost like a checkpoint for yourself. You see a lot in RPGs when you fight a boss that you're severely underleveled for, you die, and then I guess the result of that death mechanic is kind of a mental check saying, okay, I'm not ready for this area yet. But again, that's not like an active use of it. It's not like they intentionally set out and say, okay, well, we'll kill them here automatically and let them know that they need to come back later at a higher level. It's just kind of a result of the natural progression of the game.
Right. So, I mean, that stuff's good. It's not to say that that's wrong or boring or anything. I just really like it when games do something else.
Yeah, I think...
Like in FTL, when, you died, but you unlocked a new ship, like, cool, right?
Yeah, there's like a lasting consequence to your previous playthroughs. And that's quite interesting.
And that does... So that... I like it better. I think it's cooler. But it does also... If you don't do it right, like if every time you die, you gain more skills, like let's say Rogue Legacy again, that just means that eventually you're going to win if you just go through it and die enough times. So that's sort of a bummer because then the challenge is ingrained with just playing it over and over. So I might not be entirely right on that because it also does have a downside.
Renowned Explorers does it as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Even if you die, you still get expeditions towards that person being a captain next time.
Yeah. I do like how it uses this as a mechanic because you can revive somebody, but that just basically means they can die again and count against your score.
Yeah, that is a good way to do it, because you do really only have a very limited pool of resolve points. So if you bring somebody up for them to get knocked back down, you really moved yourself closer to losing your entire game.
Yeah, it turns into a tactical decision at that point, which is cool.
Great.
Yeah,
and it is again more and elevated above than simply just, okay, now I know a little bit about this encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess in your experience, what are some games that have like really done like that death as a mechanic really well, aside from like Shadows of Mordor?
DayZ does it really well, because if you die, your corpse is still there, so you conceivably could run back. Well, usually if you've been playing for a couple of weeks on the same character, you've got a lot of stuff on your person that you would like to have back. So it becomes a mad scramble to find your corpse before some other player does and drags your stuff off. You know?
You know what that reminded me of, actually? Did you guys ever play Zombie U?
Yeah. I was actually going to bring that up earlier. That does it as well. If you die, your old character turns into a zombie. You can find that zombie and get all your stuff back. Really cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that brings, almost every roguelike has a ghost sort of feature. So if you die in a dungeon, your ghost will be there next time and you have to fight them.
Oh.
Oh, I know that's pretty common.
Yeah, I don't really play roguelikes all that often, so I don't know.
If you want failure as a mechanic, just Mario Brothers. How about that?
Oh, yeah, with the lives and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess that I haven't seen a game with a life system in a long time, so I guess we decided that's a bad idea.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, it was an unnecessary mechanic, I think.
Well, what was the result of losing all your lives? You went back to the very beginning of the level, right?
Yeah, some games had continues, but yeah.
Yeah, but
or a limited number of continues, which is weird. Like, if you're going to give me continues, why don't I have 9 lives instead of 3 lives and 3 continues?
Yeah,
right?
So because thinking about death, like those mechanics, you see a lot of, it almost becomes redundant because you see a lot of those mechanics like back to back in the same game where you have a limited amount of lives, and then you have a limited amount of continues, and all that amounts to is just going back to your like last checkpoint. And I don't know if that's just a result of like the convenience that nobody wants to play a game where they're forced to start from the very beginning again.
Well, no, because it's disheartening. If you've been working on something for hours and then you lose your last life, you have to start all over again. I mean, would you want to play to play that game again anytime soon? I don't think so. Unless it's randomized and stuff. That's a different story altogether.
Yeah, I guess man, you know what? You're right. I'm looking at it and I'm like, no, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I guess that's me now versus me back then. There's something to be said for the triumph that comes at the end of that process, but now I'm looking at it and winning it does not feel good enough to make up for all that progress loss and going through the same content over and over again. And so maybe games have changed in a good way in that regard.
Yeah, the payoff is not big enough to justify playing like 5 or 6 hours of the same game again because you lost a life near the end of that game.
Definitely not.
I don't know if this
not.
counts, but the zombie mode in Halo 2 was really fun at using death as a mechanic.
Refresh
my
memory.
Describe that one to me. That was a custom game mode, right?
It was a custom game, but like where it's a group of players assuming the role of like the zombies, and then a group of players assuming the role of Spartans, and then if a zombie kills you, you die, and then you join the other team.
That's cool, like a Sharks and Minnows thing.
Yeah, so it's relatively simple, but it's a cool use of the idea that there's an actual consequence for dying.
Yeah, I think that is the big thing here. I mean, death should have meaning in video games, or else it's just a boring wall that you're slamming your head against.
I mean, I guess not even necessarily meaning, but it's really fun to see games that the character death has some kind of impact on the overall experience of the gameplay, and not just learning a little bit and starting over. Like you said, Shadows of Mordor, your death means that character gets stronger, he gets more attributes, and it becomes a little bit harder for you down the line.
And a gift that's a gift that keeps on giving, because every time you die after that, they become stronger again and again and again, which could end up with you having to fight an army of orcs that aren't afraid of anything and can't be touched, which I think is awesome, because you are the person that got yourself in that situation by dying.
And it's cool because like that actually it punishes you for having that Zerg mentality, because a lot of those games with, death is just kind of like a momentary obstacle that if you just Zerg it enough, you'll eventually overcome it. But with a game like Shadows of Mordor, if you keep Zerging that one enemy over and over again, chances are you'll keep dying over and over again, and it just gets, the hill becomes even steeper.
Yep. You have to be careful with some of those orcs. You have to learn their movements, learn their weaknesses and strengths. You have to plan your execution. And indeed, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail is actually, a big thing in that game.
To a lesser degree, even Splinter Cell did the whole failures and mechanic thing, because not necessarily in that failure means death, but failure as in, if you fail to disable certain cameras, or if you fail to actually be stealthy throughout the mission, you can set off alarms that makes that progression infinitely harder.
Yeah.
Oh man, Splinter Cell multiplayer had a really good one, because you only had a certain number of lives, but if you died, you replenished all your inventory. So that led to some really interesting tactical decisions, because you could be at a point where, like, as a mercenary, you'd laid down all your mines and spy traps and shot all your grenades, so essentially all you have left is your gun. So if you die, you can get all that stuff back, but also if you die, you'll be one life down.
Right.
So that was some interesting tactical stuff, because you could be like a sacrificial lamb. Like, you could set yourself up to be caught by the spies so your partner could kill him. Made you think about how you wanted to use those deaths in a way that was to your best advantage.
Make it meaningful. Make it something that lasts everything that comes after the death.
Actually, you know what? Something that I do like, because I think we're also limiting ourselves, because I think we're being too close-minded in the sense that we're thinking death equals failure, when in reality, there's different failure states within games that can contribute to that. Because I know Dragon's Dogma does have the failures and mechanic in the sense that it's entirely possible for you to fail certain quests. I know when you first start the game, right when you're coming out of town, there's a little merchant you can run into, and he's getting attacked by goblins. And it's entirely possible for you to fail that little, I guess, unwritten quest where you save him. And if that's the case, he's actually a pretty important merchant throughout the game. And if you don't save him there, he just never appears. So you completely locked access out to him the rest of the game.
Whoa. I'm glad I saved that dude.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of like an idea of using like just little, I guess, conditional failures as a mechanic for the game, because I mean, it does impact the rest of the experience.
NPC death. Never really thought about that.
Demon Souls did it, like Dark Souls did it, where if you don't rescue certain NPCs, they don't show up later on in the game, they contribute to the story.
Resident Evil 4, the shopkeep. If you kill him,
the shopkeep,
he doesn't
you
come
kill
back
shopkeep.
either.
Yep.
Or Morrowind, if you kill somebody, you just stop the main quest completely.
Yeah.
But they tell you about it, which sort of takes some of the sting out of it.
But I mean, that's an area. I don't think, like, you want the player to have that trigger of saying, like, hey, this is the failure incoming. You don't want somebody just to accidentally stumble upon it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because that does become frustrating when you're just doing your thing and all of a sudden you realize you just rendered the game unwinnable. Because in that case, it's not even failure as a mechanic, it's just failure as a punishment.
Yeah. But it's something that unifies all games basically all together. Like, as you play a game that you're going to fail at some point.
Right.
So when you do, make it part of the game. And that will bring us to the end of episode 36 of the Select Characters podcast. We did it again. Good job, us.
Yeah.
And now it's time for the Game Club segment. Every week we pick a game, we play it, and talk about it. You can find those conversations on our YouTube, and if you want to contribute, please do. I'll give you all the contact information at the end of the episode. And this week, the Game Club will be chosen by our very own Enrique Cancel. Enrique, what do you want to play this week?
I actually want to give a shout out to Sleeping Dogs. I've actually brought that game up a lot in previous episodes, and it's actually one of my favorite because I think it has a really good blend of different genres. I think it'd be fun for us to try.
Game.
Awesome. All right, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, like that city, that is one of the best cities in video games ever. It just feels alive,
I actually haven't played it, but I'm excited to.
Nice.
I mean, I hear
it's good. It's good.
Cool. All right, so we're going to play Sleeping Dogs for our game club, and if you want to contribute to that or for anything else, if you want to suggest a topic or just say hello, you can find us online, reddit.com/r/selectcharacters. You can send us an email, selectcharacters@gmail.com. Facebook and Twitter, we're around. Get in touch. Give us 5 stars on iTunes because that helps, I think. Ryan says it helps, and I believe him. And also check out our YouTube channel where we have opinion videos, we have game clubs, we have this very podcast going up weekly. Check that stuff out. Like, subscribe, whatever the general internet affirmation stuff is. Just do all that for us. We appreciate it. And of course, as always, thank you very, very much for listening. We appreciate you letting us into your ears every week, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening.